how's your sleep? And he said, oh, I haven't slept well in 10 years. If danger is the air you breathe and the water you swim in, you don't know it's there. You don't even know. What's really happening is, well, maybe they do understand, but they don't want to understand because they don't want a boundary.
Welcome to the Create Today podcast. I'm your host, Karen Stanley, certified rapid transformational therapist and hypnotherapist. And my passion is helping women heal from the past and learn how to create the life they love one day at a time. And this show is all about how you can do just that. My guest today is Merianne Drew, a holistic nutritionist and a life coach and a relationship coach. And I'm really excited to have you here, Merianne. Thank you so much.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Too. We're going to talk all about relationships. In this episode, we're going to focus on relationships as couples, people who are already in couples, because we could talk about what single people can do. And I think that should be a whole nother episode. So maybe we'll do part 2 at another time. Let's help the singles out.
Sounds like fun.
Obviously my jam. But this one, I like to focus on people who are already coupled up. And I know that from what I see in my practice and my clients, communication is a really tough issue. And what do you think in your practice and all the clients and the couples that you help? What are some of the most common root causes? Because I think most people don't understand, I have trouble with communicating with my husband, but they kind of just search for strategies without uncovering the root cause.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can talk for a long time on this.
Yeah.
So this kind of reminds me of a conversation I had a couple of months ago with a gentleman who was really interested in coaching with me. And he'd read a lot of books already, personal growth. He'd been to a lot of therapists. He'd been through a lot of courses. And he knew a lot of the strategies, right? But he couldn't access them readily when they mattered. Yeah. And so then I asked him, how's your sleep? And he said, oh, I haven't slept well in 10 years. And I said to him, I cannot help you until we fix your sleep. And by the way, you're off the hook for beating yourself up now for not being able to access all the strategies that you've learned in the heat of the moment when they matter. Wow. Because when we can't sleep, we can't think. And we cannot mediate negative emotion. I mean, think about it. If you've been around a toddler who hasn't had a nap, you can set your watch by it.
You can.
That tantrum's going to happen. And we're not that much different. So people who are not sleeping, and we know that, all of the chronic problems with sleep are on the rise and have been on the rise. Sleep apnea is on the rise. Insomnia, you name it. And so that's a big root cause. So a lot of people don't like to really acknowledge it, but our physical health is a huge root cause of a lot of our relationship dysfunction. And then,
so glad you said that. I don't think most people think of that. I'm having relationship problems, but when's the last time you had a nutritious meal? When's the last time you took a vitamin? When's the last time you went to the gym?
What's your BMI? What's your,
all of the things that help your physical body.
Yes.
Wow. Yeah. I'm so glad you said that.
And vice versa. So in my case, I've just become more acutely aware of the reality that my relationship survived crisis. And a big reason why it survived crisis was because I was taking care of myself, because I was eating nutritious food, because I was going to the gym regularly. And I don't know that it would have had such a great, a result if I hadn't been. But I was really healthy. I was eating really well. I was taking care of myself. And when my relationship was going through crisis, I was sicker than I've ever been. Wow. I was more chronically ill than I've ever been in my whole life. And I didn't connect. I was naive to the stress, the mental, emotional stress was causing symptoms in my body. And so I tried to address it with all the physical remedies, herbs, and, nutritional supplements, the acupuncture, chiropractic, like all the things. Yeah. And nothing really helped. And then once we were able to face the cracks in the foundation and, really face head on the problems that were at the root of our dysfunction and turn things around, my body healed very quickly and completely. Wow. And so that was a big wake up call for me as a nutritionist, health coach, you know, and then, you know, the strategies that I had learned in my own relationship, I was able to help with clients just as they came up. It wasn't like a main focus yet. And so a lot of clients who had uncontrollable weight gain or stubborn weight loss or symptoms, I would dive deep and find a really dysfunctional relationship that was stressing them out. And I'd apply what I learned in my relationship, and lo and behold, the symptoms would lift, the weight would come off. So they affect each other.
Absolutely. It's so great to remind everybody, you know, it both ways, and in all ways, we have to keep taking care of ourselves. Sorry, kids, you have to always take care of yourself, unfortunately.
First.
You have to do it first, right? Okay. So then we identify the root cause and we take care of our bodies. We get the sleep that we need and nutrition that we need. Then we can think.
Yes. Like brain fog is a big complaint for a lot of people these days.
Absolutely.
If you have brain fog, you can't think. You can't, you know, go to the grocery store and get everything in one trip. You have to keep on going back and forth.
Yeah. Oh, I feel attacked. Just kidding. I use Instacart.
Oh, nice.
I hate grocery shopping.
I hate it too. It's my least favorite chore.
Totally. Sometimes I have an emergency and I have to go and drop it by the store, but I can never do it in one trip. So we're able to think, and we calm. You're also talking about calming your nervous system.
Yes.
Once you reduce the inflammation in your body, your nervous system also reduces the inflammation.
Right.
Okay. Then what comes next? And everybody is different and everybody's relationship is different, obviously, but there are some similarities you must see. And the most common thing that is the hardest for men and women too.
It's poor emotion regulation.
Emotion regulation. Okay.
Because when we're triggered emotionally, we cannot think with our frontal lobe, our rational reasoning, most evolved part of our brain. That's our less evolved part of our brain, our limbic system. That's our fight or flight. That's our I'm in danger. I have to look for threats, even if they're not there. And, you know, make mountains out of molehills. That kind of hypervigilance that happens when our nervous system is activated like that. So poor emotion regulation, or in other words, it's called neuroticism, you know, sensitive to negative emotion, is a big block to being able to communicate effectively, because all that comes out is emotion, and a lot of emotion creates irrational thoughts. Crazy thoughts. And then we regret what we said. We're like, I can't believe I said that. And if we were to watch the tape of the way we were interacting, we'd go, oh my gosh, who is that? Why did I say that? Why did that make sense in that moment? And you turn back into a toddler. Yes.
And you're literally just not able to take a breath and think through it because you're in fight or flight.
Right. And I love that you said take a breath, because when we take a breath, we signal to our nervous system, I'm safe.
Yeah. A lot of my clients have a hard time just being safe. They have been in fight or flight for so long without even knowing it. So what are some ways that people could identify whether they're in fight or flight most of the time? Maybe somebody is not really realizing it, that they are.
That is such a great question, Karen, because, you know, if danger is the air you breathe and the water you swim in, you don't know it's there. You don't even know any kind of contrast. And in this dual reality that we find ourselves in, the point of greatest awareness and consciousness is the point of highest contrast. So that's why with my clients, I always recommend a daily ritual to start your day with positive emotion on purpose, creating positive emotion on purpose. So whether that's writing down what you're grateful for, that's always the best way, in my opinion. Doing one little thing that's very loving towards yourself, creating positive emotion, playing with a puppy, or, you know, something that brings you joy. Exercising, endorphins create positive emotion without us even really trying with our minds to do it.
It's true.
And so that starts your day with positive emotion. So if you have a switch to negative emotion, then you have the contrast, and you can notice, oh, I feel I've lost my peace, essentially, is what that is, and to know that this need not be is really the key. I need not lose my peace here.
And then I would say, and doing that daily is training your brain to say, this is okay. This is safe. This is center.
It's safe to feel okay. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
That's something people don't sometimes, they're very surprised to find that out.
Yes.
Like,
that they're sensitive to feeling okay.
Yeah. Like I'm not worried about anything and I don't like that.
Yes.
I feel weird. I don't know what's happening. That reminds me of an episode
of Sex and the City.
Oh, I don't know if I saw it. I did watch the show, but I don't know about this one.
She was with, the main character, Carrie, was in a stable, loving, mutual respectful relationship. And she woke up in a start and going, something's amiss. What's wrong? And she started shuffling through all her stuff. And she's like, I hadn't even missed a dental cleaning. Like, what was wrong with me? And then she realized, oh my gosh, I'm in a grown-up relationship.
Yeah, it's foreign.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So I love that. Plant the contrast. And so also so that you can get used to that and so that you can calm your body. It's all habitual. It's all neurotic pathways. And we need to create the new neural pathways.
Right. Our whole brain is based on patterns.
Yeah.
Right. And if you have 100%. That, the air you breathe is fight or flight, then that's a pattern that has been created over a long, long time. And in order to cancel out that pattern, another pattern has to be done. And it's like homeopathy, right? Another pattern in the other direction, just as long. And one of my coaches, and I'll never forget it, I'm so glad she said this to me. She said, Merianne, you can't walk 5 miles into the middle of a forest, turn around and expect to walk out in 2 miles.
It's so true.
That landed on me. I was like, oh.
9 miles in, 9 miles out, then in. Yeah. I had a friend who said that to me a long time ago too. When I hurt my knee. It's like, it just takes time. There's nothing you can do to speed it up. Nothing.
And isn't that so kind for people to tell us the truth?
So nice. Yeah. Okay. So what happens when you have like, I don't want to journal. I've already tried that. I can't meditate. I can't, it's like these beliefs that people have that I have all had at one time too. I remember in my late 20s and early 30s trying to do meditation and I spent $1 jillion on these CDs and I told myself I could not do it. I know what's happening now, but there's also some ways that we can help clients who just have a really hard time changing, developing a new pattern or developing that. I can't even imagine, starting my day in a positive energy. I've got alarm clock goes off. I've got 10 minutes to get, my son ready and get out the door and we're always late.
So it just takes one small thing. So if it seems big and overwhelming, then that's not your thing.
Yeah.
Right. So it has to be one small thing. I was coaching last night and I was explaining to this person that love is all encompassing. That means it doesn't have limits. It doesn't have boundaries. It doesn't mean that you show love to everyone except for you. Love includes you. So if you're not acting towards yourself with love, then what you're doing is codependency. It's not love. So what is one loving thing that one tiny, seems so easy to do, you don't have any resistance in your body when you think about doing it, or very low resistance when you think about doing it. And she said, when I feel hungry, I'm going to feed myself. I'm like, okay, yeah. I mean, it seems so basic, but everybody is where they is and where they are, and then they have to start where they are.
Exactly.
And that was just that one little thing. And so for that example with, alarm goes off and my son, I have to get him going. 10 minutes earlier, get up a little, not a half hour, not an hour, not the 5 a.m. club,
right?
But a little bit earlier to set your day intentionally and not responsively or reactively to whatever's going on in your environment. That's empowering because then you feel like you're the one in control instead of, being the victim of your environment.
Yeah. Brilliant. There's so many things that happen neurologically when you get up and you make a different decision. And it's even that tiny of an amount. Yeah. It's funny you say the 5 a.m. club because I'm in it now, but I remember.
How long did it take you to get there, right?
A long time. It's not my favorite.
Oh,
it's still not my favorite.
Most people in the 5 a.m. club will say that. Yeah.
It's not, I don't really get out of bed jumping for joy that it's, 10 till 5 and I'm going to the gym.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first started because I had, I was a new single mom and my sister lived with me. So I thought that's the only time I'm going to be able to actually exercise. And I had a babysitter. She wasn't at work yet. So I could leave and do the 5 o'clock class, get home at 6, and then start the circus.
Yep.
And so the only reason why I even add that is that if it seems insurmountable, if it's something that seems like I'm never going to get used to this, it just takes time.
Right.
It just takes time.
It does. And you got to be patient, and you have to believe in the power of your own will, because that is way more powerful than motivation. Motivation is not going to create a habit ever.
Yeah. And a habit is not created overnight. None of the things that we do are the mind learns by repetition.
Right.
So that's the only way to learn. How you've learned every single thing else, every neural pathway, every thought, every reaction.
Yeah. When I was going through my holistic nutrition certification, I remember being a little bit annoyed at my trainer for saying the same things over and over and over. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Guess what I remember?
The things he said over and over. It's so funny.
Yeah.
I had a history teacher. She's like, you are not graduating unless you know the Civil War was 1841 to 1845. I'm like, all right, you know how many people don't know the exact years of the Civil War?
I thought it was still 1865.
No, 41. It started, no, 61 to 65. See, I already forgot. Okay, that was a terrible idea. So World War II is 41 to 45.
Oh, yes. World War II, yes.
Okay, so I already forgot. Sorry, Miss Dobbs. But I knew what I meant. I said it wrong.
I'm a history nerd too. I love that stuff.
I know.
I'm actually reading a book right now called Family, Sex, and Marriage in Early Modern England from like 1500 to 1800. And it's fascinating. It's giving me an interesting context for just marriage today.
Oh, yeah. I'd love to.
It's very interesting. Yeah. Oh, but bringing the, the taking care of yourself into the context of like a relationship.
Yeah.
If, most people are pretty well matched for most of the time they're together. Like they have the same kind of mindset, the same kinds of routines. They have the same the same a lot. And so when one person starts to take care of themselves by getting up earlier and taking care of themselves, things start to change in the relationship just from that one thing. And it creates tension. And it creates what I call the pull apart, because it makes the other person's mediocrity that much more uncomfortable. They know that they could be taking care of themselves better. But it's easy to ignore when misery loves company and everybody's doing it together. So that will happen. And that is necessary. That's the first step if you are in a relationship that you're finding intolerable, that you know needs to grow. It's taking care of yourself. It's doing things that you haven't been doing that take care of yourself. And while that will feel really good for you, it will feel bad for the relationship. And that is normal. That's supposed to happen.
So glad you said that. Okay. So is that a very common trajectory if that one of the couple or both of them don't have a habit of taking care of themselves? Oh, yeah. Okay. So that's a very common thing. And then you may work with one of the partners, and then they start to make changes to their health, their diet, their routines. And
then their mindset starts to change.
Yeah.
And their attitudes start to change, and the way they relate start to change, and the other partner pushes back. That's normal.
Okay. And then how do you coach them through that? Once you start to make changes in your life, it's very uncomfortable for your husband or your partner. How do you coach them through that?
It's basically courage. You're going to need courage because this is going to be hard. It's going to be really hard. And a lot of people chicken out. They chicken out and they quit and they go back to being who they were. I was coaching somebody just a couple weeks ago, and she said, I was going to therapy and I felt better, but he didn't like how I was changing. And so I stopped going and I quit school because he didn't like that I wasn't doing my cleaning and cooking duties as much as normal. And I was like, that sucks. I understand, but that's a self-betrayal. And we have to start with forgiving ourselves. That's one thing I know about healing. Forgiving ourselves helps a lot.
Well, let's talk about that. Why do you think that it's so hard for us to forgive ourselves to begin with? Why do you think it's so difficult?
Because I think it gets drilled into us when we're kids, when we're being corrected, and when we're being corrected harshly. And that, I think that's just, even if we had great parents, we all have an ego and we all have a personality that we develop, and we have to in order to transcend it. And that's just the thought system of the ego, to find fault wherever there can be found, to find blame wherever it can be found. And it's pretty easy to find it in ourselves.
Yeah. But some people, they don't have a hard time forgiving others. They just cannot get out of the shame and blame and guilt.
Right. That's a
themselves.
shame-tethered personality, right? So it's just a basic belief that they picked up along the way, that there's something inherently wrong with me, and that there's something shameful about me that I must hide from others and never let anybody see who I really am. So we go about having really superficial relationships because nobody really gets to know the real us when we have that situation.
Yeah.
Because we're hiding who we are.
They
right?
don't want to show it. Yeah.
And so we deny our needs. And so people don't even really know how to love us because we don't know how, we don't know who we are. And then we can't communicate that to another person. So another person can't trust us. They always have this sense of uneasiness underneath, like, oh, I feel like something is underneath there that's going to come out if I let my guard down, because there's something being hidden.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really interesting. Okay. So do you talk through that with clients about how to baby step your way into vulnerability and how to how to expose little bits of yourself at a time, and what really helps? What really helps when people are so afraid to reveal who they really are?
It takes just tiny little tiptoes in the direction of being vulnerable and having the courage to be vulnerable. And that is a spiritual journey. There is no bones about that. That is a spiritual journey. And people who are not willing to take that journey concurrently, they don't do very well.
Well, a spiritual journey is about 10,000 books worth. So could you walk us through some of the things that really help people?
Well, there's some great books out there, but but it's first, like I said, is when you have noticed that you've lost your sense of peace, to recognize this need not be, right? And then being willing to recognize that I've lost my peace, not because of something out there, but because of something in here, because of perception that I have chosen. And so I'm willing to see things differently is the next thing. And if you're willing to see things differently, then the things you're dealing with actually change. And then you're able to respond instead of react. And you're not only if you're going to surrender your own perception, which is leaning on your own understanding, then you have an empty space for a more enlightened perception to enter. And that rarely comes from yourself, in fact, ever. That's not going to come from you. That's going to come from your higher power, whatever you want to call it. And surrendering to that guidance is the thing that saved my marriage and continues to save any marriage. It's leaning on that guidance of, I don't know what to say, give it to me. And then exactly the right thing to say shows up. Wow. So that it lands, so that the other person can hear the communication. Trying to communicate, like I remember early on in my relationship, I would rehearse conversations that I knew, hard conversations that I knew were coming, that needed to be had, and the truths that needed to be said that I hadn't been saying. And I would rehearse them in my head. And so that stressed me out, because I was like having the same conversation over and over and over, and my body doesn't know the difference. But I came to a point where that was exhaustive, and it wasn't as effective as just surrendering to that guidance to tell me what to say, to help me to know what to say. But I had to have a clear mind. I had to have a well-functioning body to be able to be a well-functioning receiver of a message, right? If your radio's busted, it can't receive any signal. So you have to keep that receiver really, well maintained so that you can get the message. And then the words come.
That's beautiful. So surrender your perspective. First, you have to identify that I'm holding on to, God, you said it so beautifully. What did you say? I identify that you are holding on to a perspective.
Yeah, a perception that has caused me to lose my peace.
Yes.
It wasn't something out here. I lost my peace because of the way I chose to interpret what was just done.
I chose to interpret this way, and then surrender to that and look at other possibilities. Yeah, I always, early on, because we've only been together 10 years, and early on, I would pray for the same thing. Like I would say that, please give me or thank you in advance is how I would really say it, the right tone and the right timing and the right words. So it's not just the words. Sometimes I'm saying what's on my heart and I think I'm communicating so well and it's not being received because of the way I'm saying it.
Yeah.
I'm too short or too,
or your facial expression.
Could be my face.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. And so I would always pray for the right time. And then I would just kind of wait because I knew I wanted to have a really hard conversation. And it's interesting that you say that, because I've seen that in my own life where that really does present itself in another time, a couple of days later. It could just, then I could just let it go because I know I'm going to be guided to the right time.
Right.
And then when my nervous system is regulated,
yes,
and then we can speak from the heart. How do you help people get more courage?
That can be done outside the realm of the marriage, right? Or of the relationship. It's doing things outside of your comfort zone. Most people in our very comfortable modern era, we've lost our edge. We've lost our sense of adventure. We've lost our risk-taking that we had in our teens and early 20s. And so it's taking those little risks to do things that you don't normally do, or do things that you've always wanted to do, but you always kept yourself from. And just practicing in the realm of your own personal sphere can help you have courage. And then just feel the fear and do it anyway in both spheres, right?
Right.
Just having 20 seconds of insane courage to feel the fear and do it anyway. It does work.
So you have clients just pick other things that also require courage that have nothing to do with
building
relationships.
A business, or I have a client that has a business and she has a first-time business owner and she inherited a team and she'd never been in leadership before. And so this was a huge going beyond her comfort zone and just saying things with courage and standing up for herself and standing up for her team. And it's been amazing to watch her blossom. And then we're working on the relationship too, but that's kind of concurrently. And she's becoming so empowered from taking those risks and feeling the fear and doing it anyway that it's translating into her relationship too.
So cool.
Yeah.
That is so cool. How fun. What are some other things that come to mind as far as communication that you've seen and things that you have found? Is there anything else before we move on? Is there anything else we didn't cover?
Well, so silence is oh gosh, there's so many things. So
just one at a time. We have time.
So I'm a fan of Jordan Peterson, and he says to make yourself dangerous. And that doesn't mean physical danger always. It means be articulate, learn how to be articulate, and you will be a formidable force and you'll be able to hold your own in hard conversations and not get railroaded or, steamrolled or whatever analogy you want to use.
Or just chicken out and stop.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And so becoming articulate is a skill that you can build, right? Some of us are not so language proficient. Some of us did better in math, and that's okay.
It's okay.
But you can still get better at it. And then one of the things that I've noticed in communication is the power of not talking. I coach on this a lot, actually. So my clients in their toolkit, they get this diagram, and it's red, yellow, green circles. And it kind of tells you where people are at emotionally and psychologically. So if they're showing the outward signs of fight or flight, they can't process language. I mean, anyone who's tried to rationalize with a kid who's having a full-on tantrum, they can't hear you. They can't have a conversation. They can't even process what you're saying. You're saying it and they go, what did you say? Like they can't. So it's so important to recognize those signs of the person that you're dealing with and shut up. Really learn to shut up. And this is hard for women, but not always. Some men are the pursuers in the relationship, but we just have to learn to shut up and you let our body language do the talking. So if somebody's really triggered, you want to just stand there in presence and not run away, because that feels like an abandonment. Now, the reason people mostly run away from conflict is because they can't tolerate, or they choose not to tolerate, the emotional tension that they're in. It's uncomfortable, right?
Definitely uncomfortable.
So then somebody feels ends up feeling abandoned, right? So being willing to have the courage to sit in that emotional tension is big for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And just not talk and wait while that person regulates while you regulate, right? And then wait for the cues to see when it's safe to move a little closer and maybe put a hand on a hand or put a hand on a knee or on a shoulder and just be with them while everybody calms down. It's so powerful just to not talk.
Wow.
And another part of not talking, this kind of goes the other direction, is a lot of people get into this argument pattern where somebody's setting a boundary and the other person goes, well, why? Right? Because I'm not used to this boundary.
Yeah.
Well, why? Explain it. I don't understand. And the other person tries their best to explain it. And they're being as articulate as they can be. The other person goes, I don't understand though. I don't get it. Explain it to me again. And they go back and forth, explaining and not understanding. And what's really happening is, well, maybe they do understand, but it's they don't want to understand because they don't want the boundary. And so the person who is being pulled into this back and forth, their job is to shut up. They've explained it to the best of their ability, and no other tries are going to make it better. It's just shut up. And the other person's going to do character assassination and try their best unconsciously. This is all unconscious manipulation to try to get them back engaged into the back and forth so that they get exhausted, so that they drop their boundary. And so the job that you just got to shut up and then realize, oh, okay, this boundary really is there and there's nothing I can do about it. And I'm just going to stop. It works with kids too.
Yeah. What if the other partner, once the one partner who shuts up and requests the boundary and stops explaining, and then the other partner realizes that oh shit, it's for reals now.
Yep.
But then they don't honor that.
Yeah. So boundaries are never reinforced with dialogue or with language. Boundaries are reinforced with action all the time. And that's where the real courage comes in, because you have to be willing to tell your partner who is having trouble accepting your boundary that if this happens, then I will do this. And same thing with kids, right? If you do this, then you can expect this to happen, then you have to follow through, or your kids know you're full of crap. And it's kind of the same thing in a relationship. You have to be willing to follow through and take the action you said you were going to take. That may mean, you're going to pack a bag and go live at your girlfriend's house for a while, or whatever it was.
Right.
Then that's how a boundary really gets communicated, where people go, oh, okay, this is real.
Yeah.
And that's the hard part.
Yeah. I was thinking about being at my age, entering the soon to be, if not already, empty nester season. Most people around 50 are either have some kids that are left, or they're about kind of, that huge joke that everyone thinks that we're only going to raise kids for 18 years. Yeah.
Right.
That's such a joke. That's a lie.
Yep.
My kids aren't gone, but it's just because that's where I am in this stage of my life. I think about a lot of the raising kids it's so monumentous of a task, and it's all encompassing of every thought, every minute of your life for so long. And I feel as though a lot of couples have issues when the kids are all gone, and it's like, oh, we don't have any distractions. It's just us, now what? Do you find that a lot, that people have a hard time reconnecting? It's like, hello, hi.
Yeah, so much.
Welcome. It's nice to meet you.
So many reasons for that. So especially mothers, a lot of times make the mistake of defining themselves by their relationship with their children. Yeah. And so once the children are no longer dependent on them, they don't know what their purpose is. They don't know who they are. They have no self-concept or identity that is still intact. And so they really flounder. They really get destabilized necessarily, right? Because it's not very wise to build our self-concept, our identity on something that is transient, that doesn't last.
Yes.
Right. And so
Well, most things don't last.
most things do not. Right. And so that's part of when I'm coaching people, is like, your self-identity has to be built on something that never goes away, can never be taken from you. That's a really safe place to place it. So that's one reason, because people's identities shift and necessarily it becomes destabilized and there's a shakeup. And then the other is raising kids is a great adventure. It's a great adventure. And you're on it together. And then the adventure is gone. And so we have to find a new adventure, either together or separately, whatever it is. But we're human. We need to be grappling with some kind of adventure.
Yeah. My husband just talked to his buddy just now. He was just telling me he bought a house on a golf course and he golfs 3 days a week and, just do whatever I want. And I'm like, that sounds terrible to me. Like, that actually sounds like hell.
Yeah.
Golf takes too long. I'll play it with John. I told him I will.
6 holes.
But that's not appealing to me at all. I mean, and even my husband, he's 68. Nobody can even believe he's still working. He's like, well, because I'm not going to just golf 9 days. I have to have a purpose. I love what I'm doing. I'm making a difference. And so we talk about that all the time. Like, what are we going to do when everybody moves out? We can do whatever we want. What does that even look like? I'm like, I don't know.
Start kind of imagining things now. Maybe not taking action, but sort of exploring in your mind, like, what would I want to do?
All the time.
What has sounded interesting?
Have some land. We could go blah, blah, blah. We could go to this. We could
be a pig farmer or something.
No pigs. No pigs. Thanks. Just there's so many, possibilities, but I didn't think of that as purposely creating a new adventure. Like, we are not going to just sit somewhere and like watch TV or I'm going to work. I can work from wherever I am. I can do sessions just like you can. I'm never quitting.
Yeah. Me neither. And we know statistically when people retire, it's a short walk
5
to
years.
the grave. Yeah.
It's 5 years. That's the average.
Yeah.
So we knew that. And so I think that's really important to think of it that way. Not, it's just us. Now what are we going to do? What adventure are we going to go on? Yeah. What are our dreams? What do we really want to see or do or help or?
And that's a huge difference. People, when their kids are leaving, they have this huge grief and they have a really tough time.
In a mental hospital.
And then some people just throw a party. They're like, the last one's gone.
Wow. I can't imagine that. But that's so great. That's all your power of perception. It's I hope they live down the street whenever they, move out, and you never know what it's going to look like or where they're going to go. So that's the other reason why I can't plan my future. I'm like, well, it depends on where my kids are.
Right.
Are they going to stay here or?
A lot of people follow their kids because they want to be with their grandkids.
Of course. I do. I couldn't have kids so I could never see my grandkids. Yeah. And it was special in my kids' lives to be close to their grandparents just for a short amount of time, not the whole childhood, but they were here for several years, like I think 6 maybe. So from maybe like 3 and 5 to like, I think 9, 11.
Oh, that's a great age.
It was
to be
like
with your
perfect.
grandparents. Yeah.
And they helped me so much. And I had gone through a divorce, and thank God for my mom and dad.
Yes.
And so that's a really good way of thinking about that. Some of my clients have frustrations and thoughts and emotions that they keep to themselves, and they have a hard time getting the words out. What's your response to that? And what are some things that can really help people?
There's a lot of ways to open up what's called the throat chakra. So, and you'll know if there's a lot of indications that let you know that you're not saying what needs to be said, and you'll see that in your body, right? So you'll feel tightness in your throat. You'll get a sore throat often, or you'll feel parched. And if it's, anger, that'll be in your bladder. So there's a lot of ways to your body clues you in to let you know that you could be being more courageous and saying what needs to be said. And, no life that feels good is devoid of the truth. Like, we have to have a foundation of truth in everything. And that is first telling the truth to ourselves. Right. And so a lot of times we're not saying what's true because we're not even revealing it to ourselves. We're doing a lot of we're spending a lot of mental energy hiding the truth from ourselves. And I speak from experience. That's what I was doing. I mean, even looking at my journals from that hard time, I was doing my darndest to not face, but every once in a while with the journal, because that's the power of a journal, it would come out and the truth would come out on the page. And I didn't want to see it, but there it was. And so there's a lot of ways to do that by journaling, for one, to get in touch with your inner voice, to have a way of saying it without it coming out of your mouth.
Yeah.
And then it's right there on the page. You know, it's hard not to face it when it's there. There's a lot of ways to open up your throat chakra by like singing or screaming, just going out in nature and just yelling really loud and just opening up the vocal cords. And then, you know, a lot of people bemoan the premenstrual stage of the female cycle, but a lot of things that haven't been said get said during that PMS stage. And thank goodness. I mean, they don't get said the nicest ways probably, but they get said. So it's quite a gift.
Yeah. I just had a hormone specialist on my show.
I've
had two of them actually. And, so it's really interesting how every single thing is connected.
Everything.
And the sooner you realize that and really think about that, if I'm having an issue over here, there's about probably 100 things over in these areas that are contributing to that challenge in this area.
Yeah.
And we can help ourselves reduce challenges, but also increase our courage, you know, regulate our nervous systems, that we really need to get that true intimacy that everyone wants and everyone deserves, whether they say they want it or not. That we are human beings.
It's something in us that draws us to it.
Absolutely. We can shove it down, I guess. I wouldn't recommend that.
It makes you sick. It made me very sick.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what kinds of things were you shoving down? Just your emotions or
my
your
emotions,
thoughts?
just
how you felt about things,
angry I was, how betrayed I felt. And I didn't know how to articulate it because I didn't know, if not this, then what?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, let's face it, the model for romantic relationships in the United States today is codependency. And so when I awakened to just how not loving that is, I was like, okay, well, not this. Well, then what else?
Now what? What is there?
I didn't have a model for it. I didn't have anybody in any kind of example.
Most of us did not.
Yeah. So that was quite a journey to take it one day at a time.
Yeah.
And figure out what is not that.
I'm very familiar with codependency, and I've read all of Melody Beatty's books.
She's
and
so
I was
good.
like, it was such a challenge for me. But I want you to explain to people, just in case, if they're not really familiar with what codependency is, and what does it look like, so they can identify it.
It's big, and it doesn't manifest the same for everybody.
Right.
But for example, giving to get. So not giving because it feels good to give, but giving because you're making a covert contract in your head that if I do this, then they'll do that. Or if I love people like this, then of course they're going to respond and do the same. And then you get resentful when they don't.
Yeah, you're making like an internal contract that nobody knows about. And
Nobody
you have
was
you're setting
privy
up
to.
expectations that nobody knows.
Right. Yeah. And expectations are just
What could
resentments.
possibly go wrong?
They're just resentments waiting to happen, right?
You're just planning your resentment.
Exactly. So self-sacrificing, martyrdom. A lot of people get this idea that it's holier to give than to get, which is not true at all. So they self-sacrifice and they give and give and give, but they don't include themselves in the circle of love, and they don't take care of themselves, and then they get resentful even though they did it. Right. And then they don't have a sense of self. They don't really know who they are, what they're about, what they really believe. They just kind of shapeshift and mold themselves to whoever they're with or whoever they want to be with. And it's always, they're shapeshifting to be what they think the other person wants them to be, not even accurate information sometimes.
Not even checking in to see if they're guessing right.
Yeah, I guess this is what you want me to be, and so I'm going to be that.
Yeah.
It manifests in poor boundaries, like just you're a doormat. You lots of compassion without wisdom married with it, and compassion isn't always a good thing if it isn't tethered by wisdom.
Yeah. I'd like for you to Go explain that a little bit better, because I think you're right. Compassion without wisdom.
Yeah.
Tell my listeners what you mean by that.
So, for example, if somebody's so compassionate that they want to provide a place to land for people who are transient, people who are having a tough time, and they invite them into their home to stay, and they're molesting their daughters. That's not a net good.
A net good, right?
Right. You know, and if you look at it from like an evolutionary biology perspective, women on the personality scale, we're more compassionate than men, not necessarily so, because we have to take care of infants and not shake them to death when they won't stop crying. So that's a really good thing. But men have evolved to not have as much compassion because the family survival depended on that. So if they're gone hunting and they come across an animal that could feed their family for the next few weeks, but they find that the animal is pregnant, if they have too much compassion, they would not kill that animal, and then everybody dies.
Yeah.
So there's a balance, right? That's why men and women need each other, because we're the compassion, and then the masculine presence is that wisdom, that grounded in reality, logical, rational thing. And we help them connect to their heart. So we do need each other.
We do. Absolutely. And I think that sometimes when I found this in my own life, so I'll just speak for myself, really speaking or leaning in more to our masculine energy. And it makes total sense for me. I was by myself and I didn't have a husband, and I was raising kids and doing the work, all the things but most people are working mothers these days.
Necessary.
Yeah. So it is necessary. And so I found myself being, leaning way more into that than I needed to. After I moved in with John and we started
it's
our
hard
life
to
together.
Reformulate that.
You're like, oh, I can take it down
a couple
about
notches,
7,000 notches. I have someone who has my back now.
Right.
It was very foreign to me. And so I just think that's a good thing to point out, things that are new things new perspectives and new situations, and then circumstances change, like they always will. They're just not, when it's foreign, it just feels uncomfortable, and it's just okay. It's like,
okay.
Oh,
yeah. And we have to give ourselves patience and grace and compassion while we're updating our mental model of the world and ourselves in it as a couple instead of a single. And, that takes time to update that, but adapt we must, because if we are committed to being in an old paradigm, the new paradigm can't last.
Oh, that's so good. That's so true.
Well, and that comes also with like, if there's been a betrayal and you're trying to work through it, to not act as if 3 years down the road, they just betrayed you. Like, you have to be willing to update and see the new person that they have walked into being since that happened, if they have chosen to do that. We have to see the reality of the present. And if we're committed to seeing a past version of somebody, then they will eventually feel frustrated at trying to prove themselves that they're not that person anymore.
Right.
And they'll just be like, well, I'll just be that person again. And
speaking of Sex and the City, what did you think about that whole move about her husband cheated, and the therapist said, we'll just meet on either sides of the bridge, and if you guys both come together on the bridge, then you're going to make it. Did you see that one?
I forgot that
I think it's the movie.
It's been a while.
Yeah, the redhead.
I wasn't really into the movies. The redhead and her husband.
That's
right.
I think he cheated.
He cheated,
right?
Yes. Yeah, and it was kind of like, we're going to take a risk, both of us, and see what happens, and trust that the other person's going to show up.
What do you think about that method? Meet on either sides of a bridge and run to the center.
It's very romantic. It's very worthy of Hollywood.
It makes a good movie.
But in the microcosm, we're doing that every day. We're meeting each other on a bridge, and we're kind of going, are you game? And a lot of people don't realize that, when you're rebuilding a relationship, when you're rebuilding trust, which takes a long time, a lot of people don't want to realize it takes a long time, like 3-4 years to really rebuild after a betrayal. Okay. And there is no certainty. And that's why it's so uncomfortable. Yeah. People don't feel comfortable in uncertainty.
Yeah.
We need a sense of certainty. Is this going to last? Is this not? I just need to know. And you can't tell the other person because you don't know.
I don't know.
And so you have to do it one day at a time. Are you game today? Yeah, I think so. Are you? Okay. Let's try today, right?
Just one day at a time. That's my favorite line. Create today.
One day at a time. Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much. How can, just tell people how they can work with you?
Oh, sure. So you can go to my website, meriannedrew.com. My name's spelled a little strange. So it's MERIANNEDREW .com. And then you can schedule a free discovery call. And that's just, complimentary, talk about what you got going on. The gift of clarity is my gift on that appointment, where I can help you to see things the way you could see them if you were a little bit stepped back like I am, right?
Yeah.
And then make a decision from there if you want to move forward, or, if we're not a good fit, I will point you in the direction of somebody who definitely can help you. A lot of times I've pointed people in the direction of hypnotherapists because there's some really deep stuff that must be resolved in other ways.
Yeah. It can be done without hypnotherapy, but if you're having a challenge, we really need to get relaxed and get into the subconscious.
Yeah.
Then it's available.
It is. And I do, when I work with clients, I do have a method by which we directly interact with the unconscious, because that's the only way to do it. You can't access those deep, deep traumas with the conscious mind. There's this wall up. And so you have to access through the body. And so there's a process that I take my clients through that accesses those old things through the body and reconfigures them from an adult brain perspective.
I love that.
So that we can move past them.
Well, what's really surprising is in hypnotherapy, and what I've been very surprised about is the amount of beliefs that we're still holding on from our child brain. And nobody gets out unscathed.
Nobody does.
There's no way to avoid it.
That's right. And that's why becoming a parent is one of the most courageous things you can do, because your child will end up somehow traumatized because that is the human experience. That's a human condition. It doesn't matter what kind of parents you had. And some of the most amazing people that we venerate, like Oprah, they had awful childhoods. And they're these really courageous, heroic people. So it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't.
And people who you think that they were so lucky, their parents are still together. You can cite off all of these circumstances.
Right.
It's circumstantial evidence that they had a good childhood.
Right.
And for the most part, they did.
Yeah.
They're still
stuck in a lot of places.
Something is still stuck as the interpretation that you made when you were 7 or 8 or 12 or whatever. And it's still there.
Yeah.
We're just not aware of it.
Right.
And that's why
and it's inevitable because we don't have a frontal lobe when we're going through that stage of life. And so we can't look at things from an objective perspective. We can't look at things from a rational perspective because it's not online yet. And the child brain is a very self-centered, egocentric brain. So it's always going to interpret things from the place of how did I cause this, or how is this about me? And so many things in the world are not about you.
No, I know. And we might not even consciously think through it that way, but we are being triggered by something that actually happened 20 years ago.
Yes.
And we don't know it. It's something that's not even remotely the same. It's just triggering that same reaction, that same feeling. Exactly. Right. So I just think it's really helpful, I think, for just people to start building that awareness muscle. Mm-hmm. What is it? What is it that I'm thinking? And what is it that it's triggering me? When I go into fight or flight, what just happened right before that?
Right. What was I thinking? What did I see here?
Yeah.
And what was I feeling? Yeah.
And even just journaling it.
Am I responding to the actual circumstance, or am I reacting to the emotion that I don't want to feel? That's a big one.
Yes. Because a lot of times we're not, in a lot of my clients and in my own personal life, I didn't even realize it was okay for me to have other emotions besides happiness. Happiness and kindness. It's not because anybody said that. That's how I interpret it.
That's how you interpret. Yeah.
Be perfect, smile, make everybody happy. Mm-hmm. It's like, that's just how I interpreted it. But it's you can't go unscathed.
Right.
We're going to interpret things a certain way as in that brain before a brain is completely formed.
Right. Which doesn't happen until 25, 30.
Or over, yeah. And men can be 28 or 30. And it's so cool. I also like to talk to people whose kids are a little bit younger than mine, because the other new season that I'm in is having independent adult children. And it's so fun. It's actually, it's completely different, but you get to watch the stages of development and watch how much they change from 22, 23 to 28, 29.
Oh,
it's
man.
like,
totally
whoa.
different. Yeah. Well, and isn't it interesting that the stage of prime sexual reproductive, you know, what's the word? Potential.
Yeah.
Is before the brain is done.
Oh my gosh. It's
So
like,
I mean, we would not have survived probably if we were using our rational brains before we open our legs. Because we would do it a lot
we'd be
less.
extinct. Like, who said having kids is a good idea?
Right?
Yeah, it's so true. It's so great. Well, I really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much
you.
for donating your time and wisdom.
Yeah, it's a great conversation. I love talking about stuff like this.
Me too. All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you for being here and listening to my show. If you got any value at all, it would mean the world if you shared it and left a review. Remember, the only way to create the life you love is to take it one day at a time. Create today. God bless you.